The words poured from 8-year-old Lucas Miller's mouth like a declaration of war against the entire hospital system, echoing through the cold corridors of St. Vincent's one early morning that would forever change their understanding of medicine. He clutched a toy stethoscope around his neck, his tiny frame swallowed by an oversized white coat as he stared down Dr. Montgomery with a determination that made the surrounding adults instinctively recoil. 3 hours earlier, Lucas had been just another overlooked child in the hospital hallways, walking invisible among hurried nurses and doctors who barely glanced his way. He was the kid everyone knew by sight, the one who showed up every afternoon after school, sitting in the plastic chair beside bed 237, silently holding his mother's hand. Helena Miller, a music teacher prematurely retired at 35, had been hospitalized for 3 weeks with a rare neurological condition that defied all known medical protocols. "Kid, get out of the way. I've got work to do, doctor." Montgomery had grumbled that afternoon, shoving Lucas aside with the same indifference he'd show a stray chair. The boy stumbled, scattering his notebook filled with medical notes copied from the internet, the pages fluttering to the floor like confetti from his shattered dreams. The nurses giggled quietly, some patients looked away with pity, and Helena, even in her semi-conscious state, winced in pain, a pain unrelated to her illness. But now, 3 hours later, something had irrevocably changed. The same child who had been humiliated and ignored stood planted in the middle of the main corridor, blocking the chief physician's path with a presence that filled the space. His notebook was back in his hands, the pages meticulously reorganized, and his eyes shone with an intensity that made even the most skeptical pause to listen. "Dr. Montgomery," Lucas said, and his voice sounded different now. Mature, carrying an authority that shouldn't exist in such a small body. "We need to talk about my mother's treatment. There are things you're not seeing." The doctor let out a harsh chuckle, but something in the boy's tone made him hesitate. "Oh look, the kid wants to play doctor. How cute." His words lacked the conviction he intended, especially as he noticed other medical professionals had stopped in the corridor, forming a curious circle around the improbable scene. "I'm not playing," Lucas retorted, opening his notebook to a specific page. "Mrs. Miller has shown 3 episodes of significant neurological improvement in the past 2 weeks. All occurred when I was present, specifically when I sang the songs she taught me when I was younger. The vital signs show patterns inconsistent with the natural progression of her diagnosed illness." The silence that followed was so thick it felt tangible. Dr. Montgomery blinked several times, as if trying to process what he'd just heard. This wasn't the speech of a child, it was a precise medical analysis, articulated with terminology some medical students wouldn't master. How do you know about this?" the doctor asked, and for the first time in years, his voice held genuine curiosity when addressing Lucas. "Because I've been studying her for a year and 3 months, the boy replied, flipping through his notebook with the precision of someone who knew each page by heart. "Since her illness began, I've read everything I could find. Scientific articles, similar cases, experimental protocols. I know you think I'm just a bothersome kid getting in the way, but I know my mother better than any test can." The words hit Dr. Montgomery like a punch to the gut. He remembered, in a flash of belated awareness, all the times he'd encountered Lucas in the hallways, always with a medical book in hand, always asking questions that were met with impatience or simply ignored. The boy wasn't just playing doctor. He was studying medicine autodidactically with a dedication few professionals displayed. Nurse Rachel, observing from the nurse's station, approached slowly. She had been the only one to notice the correlations Lucas mentioned, but hadn't dared question the doctors about her observations. "Lucas," she said softly, "can you show us what you've written?" The boy nodded and began flipping through his notebook. The pages revealed meticulous work, hand-drawn graphs charting Helena's vital sign variations, tables correlating her moments of improvement with different stimuli, and even hypotheses about possible alternative treatments based on similar cases found in international medical literature. "Here," Lucas said, pointing to a particularly detailed graph. "On March 15th, When I sang Imagine by John Lennon, Mom's favorite song, her brain activity increased by 23%. On the 22nd, when I played on my guitar the song she composed for my birthday, her muscle spasms completely subsided for 42 minutes. And last Sunday, when I read her the poem I wrote about our pancake mornings, she opened her eyes for the first time in 2 weeks. Dr. Montgomery felt his legs weaken. He took the notebook from Lucas's hands and examined the notes with growing disbelief. It was all there. Data he himself had overlooked, patterns his 20 years of medical experience hadn't identified, and it had all been documented by an 8-year-old he treated as a nuisance. "How did you get access to all this data?" he asked, still processing the magnitude of what he saw. "I ask Nurse Rachel every day," Lucas replied simply. "She's the only one who treats me like a person, and I research everything I don't understand online at the school library. The librarian, Mrs. Marisa, helps me print out the articles and explains the difficult words." Rachel nodded in confirmation. "Dr. Montgomery, I've tried to bring these correlations to your attention several times, but..." She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. Everyone there knew how the hospital hierarchy worked, where nurses' observations were often dismissed without consideration. The doctor looked around, noticing a small group had formed in the hallway. Other doctors, nurses, family members of patients, all were observing the scene with a mixture of fascination and anticipation. Some whispered amongst themselves, others simply watched in respectful silence. It was as if the entire hospital's dynamic had paused to witness something extraordinary unfolding. And if you're following this story and feeling your heart race like mine is right now, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell, because stories like this, stories that remind us of the transformative power of love and human determination, need to be shared. We need to create a community where these moments of hope and overcoming can resonate and inspire others. Your subscription isn't just a click, it's a vote of confidence in narratives that touch the soul and make us believe in human kindness again. Now come back with me to discover how this story continues, because what's to come will move you in a way you never imagined. "Lucas," said Dr. Montgomery, and for the first time his voice sounded respectful when addressing the boy, "can you explain your theory about what's happening to your mother?" The boy took a deep breath, as if he had waited his whole life for this question. "Mom's illness isn't just neurological," he began, his voice gaining confidence with each word. "It's connected to the loss of her sense of purpose. My mom always said that music was her soul's language. When the illness started, she stopped playing, stopped composing, stopped singing. It's like a part of her died before her body got sick." He turned a page in his notebook, revealing drawings of neural connections made with colored pencils. "I read about neuroplasticity. The brain can create new connections when stimulated meaningfully. But it's not just any stimulation, it has to be something with deep emotional significance for the person." Dr. Montgomery swallowed hard. The boy's theory, although simplified, touched upon concepts of integrative medicine that he himself had studied during his residency, but abandoned in favor of more traditional and scientifically proven approaches. "And what do you propose?" he asked, genuinely interested in the answer. "That you let me be my mom's doctor in the aspects I understand better than any adult," Lucas said, and his voice didn't sound pretentious, but rather full of a mature humility. "I don't know how to use the medications or operate the machines, but I know how to touch her soul, and if her soul doesn't want to live, everything else won't matter." The words hit Dr. Montgomery like a revelation. In 20 years of his career, he had specialized in treating bodies, symptoms, lab data. When was the last time he had genuinely cared about a patient's soul? When was the last time he had considered that healing could come from places his equipment couldn't measure? "Rachel," he said, turning to the nurse, "I need to see all of Mrs. Miller's reports from the last 15 days, and I want you to officially document all the observations you've made about the correlations Lucas identified." "Yes, doctor," Rachel replied, barely able to hide a satisfied smile. "And Lucas," the doctor continued, looking directly into the boy's eyes. "I want you to keep doing what you've been doing, but now I want you to do it in partnership with me. We'll turn your observations into a medical protocol. We'll prove that love can be medicine." Lucas's eyes filled with tears, but not of sadness, of profound relief and gratitude. You believe in me." "I not only believe," said Dr. Montgomery, kneeling down to be at the boy's eye level, "I'm learning from you, and I apologize for taking so long to listen." In the days that followed, St. Vincent's Hospital transformed into a laboratory of possibilities. Lucas was officially recognized as an emotional consultant in his mother's case, an unprecedented role in the institution, but one that quickly showed extraordinary results. The boy established a rigorous routine. He arrived at the hospital every day at 3 p.m. after school and stayed until 8 p.m. beside Helena. But these weren't just passive visits. Lucas had created his own protocol of emotional stimuli based on his shared history with his mother. At 3:30 p.m., he played on the guitar the compositions Helena had created over the years. At 4 p.m., he read poems, some classics she enjoyed, others written by himself full of specific memories and promises of the future. At 5 p.m., he sang songs they used to listen to together during household chores. And at 6 p.m., he simply talked about his day at school, about his friends, about his plans for when she got better. Montgomery followed everything closely, documenting every improvement, every reaction, every sign that Helena was responding to her son's stimuli. And the results were undeniable. In the first 5 days of the new protocol, Helena showed progress that surpassed all the progress of the previous 3 months. On the 6th day, something unexpected happened. During the 4 p.m. session, as Lucas read a poem about a trip they had taken to the coast the previous year, Helena subtly moved the fingers of her right hand, not an involuntary spasm, but a conscious rhythmic movement, as if playing the piano along with her son's words. "Dr. Montgomery," Rachel yelled from the nurse's station. "Come see this." The doctor rushed to the room and found Lucas holding Helena's hand, tears streaming down his face as she moved her fingers in sync with the melody he was softly humming. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was unequivocally intentional. "Mom," Lucas whispered, "I knew you were listening. I knew you were fighting with me." In the following days, progress accelerated. Helena started opening her eyes during the music sessions, first for a few seconds, then for whole minutes. Her neurological reflexes improved dramatically, limb mobility gradually returned. And most importantly, her scans began to show brain activity in areas that had remained dormant since the onset of the illness. Dr. Montgomery found himself in an unprecedented position. He needed to explain to the medical community results that defied everything he had learned in medical school. How do you scientifically document the power of filial love? How do you quantify the impact of a lullaby on neural regeneration? How do you include in the medical record that the best treatment was developed by an 8-year-old child? The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Mariana Santos, a renowned neurologist from São Paulo, had heard about the case from a colleague and asked to evaluate Helena personally. When she arrived at St. Vincent's Hospital, she expected to find a case of spontaneous improvement that had been romanticized by the family and the local medical team. Instead, she found Lucas. "You must be the famous 8-year-old doctor," she said, approaching the boy who was organizing his notes in the hallway. "May I see your work?" Lucas looked at her seriously and handed her his notebook. Dr. Mariana flipped through the pages with growing admiration. The work was meticulous, intelligent, and revealed an intuitive understanding of neuroplasticity that would surprise any professional in the field. "Impressive," she murmured. "Lucas, have you ever thought about studying medicine when you grow up?" "I'm already studying medicine," he replied simply. "I just don't have a diploma yet." Dr. Mariana laughed, but not condescendingly, with genuine respect. "You're right, and I can tell you I've met many qualified doctors who don't have the dedication and intuition you demonstrate." She spent 3 days at the hospital, observing Lucas's sessions with Helena, analyzing the collected data, talking to the medical team. In the end, her conclusion was categorical: this case should be studied in every medical school in the country, not just for the clinical results, but for what it represents in terms of humanized medicine. It was Dr. Mariana who suggested that the protocol developed by Lucas be formalized and tested with other patients. We have here an innovative therapeutic approach based on specific and personalized emotional stimuli. If we can replicate these results, we will be facing a revolution in neurology. Dr. Montgomery, who had spent weeks dealing with his own personal transformation, embraced the idea with enthusiasm. "Lucas," he said one afternoon, "how would you feel if your method could help other families like yours?" The boy's eyes lit up. It would be the best medicine in the world, and thus was born the Lucas Protocol, officially named Personalized Emotional Stimulation Therapy for Neurological Patients. Lucas became the youngest consultant in the history of St. Vincent's Hospital, working not only with his mother, but helping other families identify the emotional stimuli that could awaken their loved ones from similar states. The boy who had been ignored and humiliated in the hospital corridors became a national reference in integrative medicine. Universities began to study his work. Documentaries were produced about his method. Families from all over the country sought out St. Vincent's Hospital in search of the kid doctor who healed with love. But for Lucas, none of that mattered as much as the moment when 3 months after his revolutionary declaration in the hallway, Helena fully opened her eyes, smiled, and said in a still weak but perfectly clear voice, "My son, my doctor, my hero." Dr. Montgomery, watching the scene from the doorway, felt tears run down his face. In 20 years of his career, he had witnessed many cures, but he had never seen a miracle as pure and true as that one. And the most incredible thing was that the miracle hadn't come from a revolutionary drug or a complex surgery. It had sprung from the determined heart of a boy who refused to give up on his mother. "Lucas," said Helena, extending a trembling hand to touch her son's face, "thank you for not letting me go." "I would never leave you, Mom," he replied, holding her hand in his small palms. "We're a team. I'm your doctor. You're my strength." Helena smiled, and for the first time in months, her voice was strong enough to fill the room. "So let's make music together again." And that's exactly what they did. That same afternoon, Lucas brought his guitar to the hospital room. Together, mother and son composed a song about second chances, about the power of hope, and about how love can be the most powerful medicine in the world. The music spread through the corridors of St. Vincent's Hospital, played over the speakers at the request of the staff themselves. Patients in other rooms asked to hear it. Relatives cried with emotion as they recognized their own struggles in the simple yet profound lyrics of the composition. And so, the boy who had been dismissed for playing doctor became the most respected physician in that hospital, not because he had a diploma on the wall, but because he had understood something no medical school could teach. That healing goes far beyond treating symptoms. It's about touching souls, awakening hope, and believing in the impossible when love is the cure. Dr. Montgomery would never be the same after that experience. He began to include an assessment of patients' emotional aspects in all his treatments. He created support groups for families. He established protocols to ensure that observations from nurses and family members were taken seriously. And most importantly, he learned to listen, truly listen, to the voices he had previously dismissed as irrelevant. Months later, when Helena was discharged, fully recovered, St. Vincent's Hospital had been transformed into a model of humanistic medicine. The Lucas Protocol was being implemented in hospitals across the country, and the 8-year-old boy who had declared war on the medical system had become a symbol of a new era in medicine, an era where science and love walk hand in hand, where each patient is seen as a whole person, and where miracles happen when you have the courage to believe in them. At Helena's discharge ceremony, Lucas was invited to speak to the entire hospital medical staff, wearing his white coat, now the right size, custom made for him. The boy walked up to the makeshift podium in the auditorium and looked out at the audience of doctors, nurses, and staff who watched him with respect and admiration. "I'm not a real doctor yet," he began, his voice echoing clearly and confidently through the room. "But I've learned that being a doctor isn't just about diplomas or medicine. It's about not giving up on people. It's about listening to what they have to say, even when they can't speak. It's about believing that everyone deserves a second chance at happiness. He paused, looking at Helena, who was in the front row with tears in her eyes and a proud smile on her face. My mom taught me that music is the language of the soul, and I've learned that medicine can also be music when it's done with love, when it touches people's hearts, when it brings hope where there was only fear. The auditorium was silent, each person present absorbing the words of this small human being who had revolutionized their professional and personal lives. I know you save lives every day, Lucas continued, but today I want to ask you something. Remember that behind every illness, there's a person with dreams, fears, stories, and people who love them. And sometimes, the cure that person needs isn't in a prescription, it's in a handshake, a song, a story, a hug. When Lucas finished speaking, the auditorium erupted in applause. Doctors openly wept. Nurses embraced each other, and in the midst of it all, Dr. Montgomery approached the boy and said something that would forever echo in the halls of that hospital. Lucas, when you grow up and become a real doctor, I'd love to work for you. The boy smiled and replied with the wisdom of someone who had lived more in 8 years than many live in entire decades. Dr. Montgomery, we already work together. And we always will, because saving people is a lifelong job. And so, as Helena and Lucas walked out the gates of St. Vincent's Hospital hand in hand, humming softly the song they had composed together, everyone who witnessed that story knew they had witnessed something extraordinary, proof that love, when guided by determination and nourished by hope, is capable of moving mountains, healing hearts, and transforming impossibilities into everyday miracles. The boy who had declared, "I'm my mom's doctor," had become so much more. He had become the doctor of humanity lost in cold protocols, the healer of souls tired of not being seen, and living proof that sometimes the greatest teachers come in small packages with giant hearts and a wisdom that no university could teach.